we had Susan from Homes for Good on the webinar yesterday, and I spoke to you and I spoke to her exactly 4 weeks ago, and it feels like it's a world ago. 4 weeks. Lot has happened, but it was speaking to yourself and speaking to Susan and a few other people that week that kind of gave us the idea to do this set of webinars, just really in what the real experiences are for leaders of social enterprises at the moment, and to be honest about it, because actually it is quite tough in a lot of ways. So thank you for coming on today. Could you start off just by giving us a wee bit about what Spartans is, and a bit about the community you work in and what it is you do, because it is.
Of course, no worries at all. So Spartans Community Football Academy is a social enterprise and registered charity that's based in North Edinburgh. In simple terms, we're the charitable arm of the football club. I'm conscious of time, so briefly work in 3 or 4 thematic areas: in education, in youth work, in physical activity and well-being. And I guess right now you could probably say we're bang right in the heart of working in partnership with lots of other community groups and organisations. So this thing that we call community cohesion, social capital, whatever phrase you want to use, we're living and breathing that every minute of every day right now.
Fantastic. So actually fantastic that you're doing that. There's a lot of changes you've made to your model recently, and that's been in response to the community that you're based in. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course, no worries, Kieran. I think we got a little bit ahead of the game, to be honest. I think the Saturday before lockdown, myself and the chairman and our business operations manager sat down and had a conversation about the way things were shaping up and what could potentially happen. So it sort of gave us an extra week to do a little bit of planning and crucially to speak to some key people in the community. And for us, those key people would include the local head teachers. So we had some conversations with the head teachers around how could we be most useful, how could we actually help, going into what was almost certainly going to be unprecedented times and really challenging for all the local families. And because we've actually included food as part of our offering, our provisions in our youth work clubs and our alternative school for the get-go, in other words, for the last 10 years, it did seem quite an obvious place where we could help. So we decided to convert the academy into essentially a food distribution hub for the local community. Linked to that, I was speaking to some other community partners around how could we try and ensure there wasn't a duplication of effort and we didn't have lots and lots of motivated idiots running about the community. Could we try and coordinate things and ensure that we made efficient use of our time? So we essentially came up with 3 work packages. We came up with one work package that was about delivering ready meals. I won't say hot meals, it's meals that can be heated up. We came up with a work package that was delivering cold food and packed lunches. And then lastly, we had the traditional, what I'll call sort of like, if you like, food bank parcels as the 3rd and final package. So we took ownership of the packed lunch work package, if you like. And just now we're just about to go next week, probably delivering something like 4,000 packed lunches a week across the local community, helping hundreds of different families. So
it's a huge amount of like you use those words, social capital, or all of these other words. In terms of COVID-19, you're working directly with the community. Some people are saying there's kind of hopes for the future about what the kind of new normal might be. Some people are seeing kind of positives about the way we're kind of operating just now, and there's certainly negatives. What could you kind of say about kind of both at the moment?
I think this single biggest positive for us, and I think for our local communities, it's certainly brought people together. I mean, I think in an instant, it's removed, I don't like using the word politics, but I think people just recognise that there's no time for that. There's no time for point scoring or what I call playing poverty top trumps. It's not about that right now. It's just about how can we get help to the front line as efficiently and as quickly as possible. So I've generally been blown away by that acts of kindness by lots of people who have came forward who've offered their help and support. And I've enjoyed working with a lot of the other community partners that I've not spent much time in the past, and I've got to learn a bit more about their service offering. And already we're having conversations around how we might work together, sort of like coming out of this at the other end. I do find the whole food thing quite a challenge, to be honest with you, because I still find it remarkable that they've allowed this to happen on our watch, where food banks have become the norm. And this is certainly shining a light on that again. And I would really hope that somehow out of this we could actually try and create a society where people are independent on getting vouchers to go to a food bank. It's the most basic requirement. So a lot. I mean, we've tried to put together a short period of time, reliable and robust, if you like, distribution, obviously, like channels, but prior to that, you've got your production and you've got your supplier chains and so on and so forth. So connect all these things, and that takes time. It can take time, and there's some issues as well. And I think for certainly me, as probably a leader, I think there's a temptation and a danger that you can get sucked into a lot of these micro decisions, and I guess trying to make myself feel better by almost like being busy and doing things, but I'm not convinced that's best use of my time. I think leaders in this current climate have really got to try and work hard and not getting sucked into that and trying to lift themselves out and above, if you like, all the mayhem that's going on at the coalface, and be thinking about, I guess, some strategic matters like you're alluding to, like what is the future going to look like? What might it mean for us? A few weeks at the start of the month, I actually jotted down on a bit of paper some guiding principles on the back of that meeting that I had with Debbie and Craig, and I thought it'd be useful to share them with you today.
Yeah, sure, that sounds good.
This has really sort of been, I guess, my sort of like my moral compass for the last month or so, but also my intention, because I think the intention behind our actions really, really matters and is really, really important. So here's what I jotted down.
Yeah.
The first thing was to look after our own wee patch of the world. I think if you try and be everything to everybody, then that can certainly be overwhelming at the best of times. Certainly in the current climate, I would say that that's overwhelming squared, overwhelming. It's just such a huge, obviously, situation we find ourselves in. So that's not to say that we're not going to try and look to help others out with our wee patch. Far from it, actually. It's about just trying to build that island of excellence within our own local community. And once that's established, then starting to outscale and trying to do more out with our own community. But I think a good starting point for us is to deal with our own wee patch of the world. And then the next challenge was in terms of like guiding principles, can we provide that support in a dignified way? I think it's really important to provide choice for people in the local community. It's not for us to tell them that they're living in poverty or that they're poor. I think that's hugely patronising, and I'm not for that. My next thing was, can we put human connection at the heart of our interactions and deliveries? I think it's stating the obvious, but that social connection, that ability to connect with people has never been needed more. So when dropping anything off at any family, can we take time to say hello and to have a conversation and just to connect with people, to try and reassure people that we're still there for them. And then the last one I jotted down to remind me was like to trust local partners' experience and know-how. I'm working with lots of community leaders that I've not worked with before, and we all make assumptions. We all want to judge people for the get-go, and again, it's just to try and park that and to try and be aware that I'm maybe doing that, and just trust their ability and their competence. I think I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago in terms of having the confidence to let go of the wheel. Sometimes I think all leaders have got a bit of the control freak in us, and again, I think just now we've just got to try, and if we can, recognise when we're feeling that emotion and just park it and put it to the side. And then the last one might surprise people, but I wanted to try and be curious. I wanted to try and spot the opportunities for growth in this experience and opportunities for us to improve as an organisation. I remember I was lucky enough to go on a course many years ago when I worked in Standard Life. It was a Master Year Motivation course, would you believe, and the chap challenged us to always use the question, what could be good about this? And I guess I've used that question for the last sort of 15, 20 years. So I've tried to put what could be good about this at the heart of my thinking as well. And that generally has stood me in good stead over the last month. I'm also a fan of a mantra. I like a wee mantra. It's no secret that one of our key mantras is dream big, dream fierce. And I think we still want to be committed to that, but maybe just now it's dream big and step small, and trying to just make sure that we're moving forward, always moving forward, but also trying to remember that this is a really, really challenging time for everybody and not to get impatient.
Absolutely. And from some of the things you said there, from just thinking about being a leader and the tough things, We spoke earlier about why people are motivated to be in this sector, and I said it's similar to some conversations I've had with some of my colleagues, Rachel, that I work with quite closely, about this sense of being in this sector to have a sense of value, and that's kind of, it's that kind of motivation and value conversation that we have. You've had to make some tough calls as a leader through COVID-19. And
Yeah,
I was just wondering,
definitely. I mean, I think probably I mean, I think the toughest call, and the one I certainly found the most difficult to make, was to furlough 60% of our staff. You know, I've over the last 10, 11, 12 years, you know, worked tirelessly with other people to try and create an organisation that is built around sacrificing the me for the we, and organisation where everybody feels that they're part of one unit and they're all in it together, and then all of a sudden, and again, I'm really not a fan of this, like putting labels on people's foreheads. We call it post-it syndrome, and we're sticking a furlough sticker on somebody's forehead, and that might be, it might be for some people, and I like to say, not degrading. It might impact that sense of value and that sense of worth. I think we're very lucky in this sector, and I feel very lucky in the role that I do, that I have a sense of fulfilment. You know, very, very lucky to work for an organisation that has an opportunity to help people. So I'm really clear about our why and our purpose and why we exist. And you know, we exist to try and improve the quality of lives of the people living in North Edinburgh. And right now, those families need us more than ever. So it is up to us to step up to the plate. Having said that, as a leader, I've also got a duty to make sure that we're financially robust and that we can be sustainable for the medium to the long term. So in terms of managing our financial health, it was absolutely the right thing to do. Did I enjoy doing it? Absolutely not. Does it still worry me? Of course it does, because I care about the people. I care about the people that are furloughed and their mental health and their mental well-being. And it might surprise you to hear this, but I miss them. I mean, I really miss them, but I miss them especially when they don't take part in the team Zoom call. Zoom becomes such a big part of our life, become like a reference point in our day or in our week in the case of our organisation. And when people don't take part in it, then you worry for them and you worry about them. So I found it a challenge, and it's still a challenge just now.
In terms of, and you mentioned obviously a really important part of your duty of care, I guess, to them is to try and ensure that there is a job and there is a long-term viability for the organisation. So that is a tough call. You're weighing up as a leader within your local community, saying real acute need that needs to be addressed, making decisions on the financial viability of your organisation, and furloughing staff who want to be involved in the team effort and actually see a lot of value for themselves and being part of that team effort. Those are all quite hard things. So there's a lot of things to unpack there. Thinking about that, so thinking about the trading model at the moment, just about the kind of nuts and bolts. How is your organisation obviously being kind of affected by that?
Well, in simple terms, the short answer is that our commercial income is ground to a halt. You know, I mean, we're actually burning cash right now. You know, fortunately, we had some reserves that we could dip into. And when I say fortunately, pardon me, that's given us obviously an opportunity to plan and to plan for, if you like, a 6-week, a 12-week, even a 6-month scenario. We're no different to anybody else. At some point, the money runs out. It's actually one of my frustrations right now, is that we've been encouraged as a sector for years to become more business focused, to become less dependent on grants, and we've done that. But now we're paying the price for that, because the vast majority of the work that we do is obviously dependent on income that comes from renting out our facilities, from our community coaching offering. So all of that, as I said, has just come to a halt. So yeah, we're having to constantly sort of like scrutinise the numbers, keep on top of that, but we're determined to come out the other side. If you like, I can't say in a neutral position, because it's going to impact everybody, and even if it just impacts you in terms of your mindset, you're going to be impacted by this experience. But certainly we want to come out of it in the most healthiest financial position we can, and I'm hugely appreciative of like our our funders and also people like CIS and so on, because I think it's in everybody's interest that we try and save as many organisations as we can.
Yeah.
The reality is that we're probably stockpiling a tsunami of like social issues that are going to hit us over the course of the next 6 months, years ahead actually. I mean, I seen yesterday universal credit applications have increased 5-6-fold. For some people who've been, that 20% might be the tipping point between on one side of the fence of like living in poverty versus the other side of the fence. So all of these unknowns that exist right now, at the back end of this, organisations like ourselves are going to be needed more than ever. And I think it'd be naive of us to think, Kieran, that no, we're just going to turn on a switch and we'll go back to like what the previous commercial income stream levels were. I don't think it'd be as simple as that. So we're just going to have to continue to work with people like CIS and other partners to ensure that we ride this out. But I'm confident we will ride it out.
Do you have any reflections? Thinking about 4 weeks ago when we first spoke, we were in shock, and I'm just speaking about the we as and the kind of royal we of society and the sector. I can remember going into work on a Monday morning after the Friday before, kind of feeling a bit kind of upbeat about the kind of such situation we're in. On Monday, it kind of seemed that overnight things had changed quite rapidly. You know, the news had changed, and activities I had planned that week to deliver, we rightly took the decision, and it was ahead of the game actually, similarly, to not deliver those sessions in person. Having a wee bit of space and where you are just now, have you had time with your board or with your team to reflect on where you are just now? Do you feel a bit different about it, and do you feel you have been able to get support for yourself as a leader, that you would maybe any tips for other people?
I'm very lucky. I mean, I think that I can only speak from my own experiences in my own organisation, and I'm blessed in that I've got some fantastic people in the leadership team at the academy, so I can spread and I can lean on them. And we've certainly had 1 or 2 calls with the finance subcommittee, but tomorrow actually will be the first Zoom call of the full board. So, you know, I've had lots of conversations and dialogue with the chairman, who's also a friend. So I certainly feel supported. Does that mean there's been days where I've not felt overwhelmed or I've worried about things? Well, of course not. No, because at the end of the day, if you're the leader of the organisation, then ultimately the buck stops with you. But no, I'm very lucky. I've been able to sort of like spread the load, as I said, and spread the responsibility. Trying to lead the organisation in these challenging times, and I appreciate the help and support that I've had for people that are still working in the organisation.
Absolutely. And
I mean, for us just now, I think it's important that we provide a clarity, that there's a consistency of understanding around like what we're going through. So as an organisation, and hopefully as a leader, I've always been someone who's been very transparent and happy to share like my thoughts and my feelings, and I think we've got an authenticity that's standing us in good stead just now. You know, I think that within the organisation you talked about earlier on, our purpose and so on and so forth, I think everybody's really clear about that, really clear about why we exist, and that's really helping us just now, I feel.
So hanging on to that and thinking about the fact that actually we're still kind of in the midst of the change, and what are the kind of hopes, I guess, for your organisation and what you can do? And you mentioned working with new partners. Have there been any things that have surprised you about maybe the context that you work in, that you maybe made some assumptions about before that have been challenged? And are there any things that you kind of hopes for the organisations that have changed in the past couple of weeks that have been a positive that you want to retain?
Gosh, that's quite a few questions to answer in one, Kieran. I guess my hopes are that that people who've maybe got some preconceived ideas about Spartans because it exists in the world of football, works in the world of sport. I mean, we still have a challenge, I think, in terms of like people's understanding around who we are and what we do and why we exist. And I think football, sadly, in the last month or so, hasn't necessarily come out of this experience in a good light. So you're tarred with that brush because you live in that world. But as I said earlier on, we do a lot of work within the world of education, a lot of work within the world of youth work, and so on and so forth. So our reach is far and wide. If I have hopes and aspirations, it might be around what new collaborations can be created, but also might people trust us going forward. With I guess a broader remit without us overstretching ourselves, because I think it is important and it is tempting to get sucked into trying to be everything to everybody, but I do think we've still got to stay true to ourselves and concentrate on what we're really good at. There'll definitely be some opportunities for us to connect to groups that we would never have thought to connect to before. And I'm a bit embarrassed when I say this now because I think, God, that seems quite obvious. So let me give you an example. There's a group called Stepping Stones that do a lot of fantastic work supporting single mums in the area. We recently launched a fantastic program called Still Kicking for women who wanted to come and do a little bit of physical activity and enjoy some recreational play. I never thought to connect to them. I never thought to reach out to Stepping Stones, and I'm embarrassed to say that. And they're on my doorstep. And it's interesting because as part of sort of like the Changing Lives Through Sport work that I've been lucky enough to be a part of, we talk about, are you inclusive or are you welcoming? Can you be both? And it's quite, I think, revealing for us in these times to discover these groups and organisations that exist within our community that maybe we hadn't reached out to before, we hadn't connected with before. So that's my big hope, is that when we come out of this, that we will be in a position to help greater numbers of people in the community, but without losing sight of who we are and why we exist. And as I said, not compromising on the quality. I want us to deliver services that are of a high standard. So I don't want us to overstretch ourselves.
I've managed to mute myself. And so,
It's all right.
You mentioned footballers before, and kind of the role football has, I guess, in terms of some young people. I mean, I wasn't one of them necessarily that kind of idolised footballers, and they were kind of aspirational, and there's that kind of role within, I guess, within football and society. Not being someone who knows much about football at all, what do you think, and you work with young people, what do you think the kind of benefits are of people of that kind of world of something aspirational, especially when we're in a time when, I guess, we're going through a period of complete, and this is a big question maybe to ask someone, complete societal change. Do you think that young people and some of the people that you work with are these kind of role models?
I think people will be inspired by different people. You know, people will find their own role models in life. You know, I think football is like any other sector, any other industry. You will have people working in that sector that are very capable, very confident, really good at their jobs. And people working in that sector that you could argue are maybe like less qualified and flawed. I think lots of amazing people working in football. There's some fantastic role models, but equally I do think there's some examples where maybe people's values are certainly not aligned with me and not with myself. So I would hope that football takes this opportunity to take a long, hard look at itself and to think about how it can perhaps disperse the monies that exist in football in a way to try and support the wider, let's call it, ecosystem. But I'm not convinced that will happen. I think that you'll probably still have the big players taking the biggest chunk of the money and still being a little bit self-centered, sadly. But that would be my wish for football, is if it could try and sort of like develop itself as sort of almost like grassroots. I mean, the big thing for me in this whole experience is what we've created locally through this sort of like food-based consortium is being driven bottom up, and it's itself been really inspiring and really rewarding.
And so hanging on to that, I guess there's some questions coming through which I'll ask before the end. So before we come on to them, just there's lots of positives there. Aside from money, what do you think organisations kind of will need? Money's a big factor to maintain this. Do you think this kind of sense of
trust? Trust. You know, I think that's the big thing for me. And again, one of my big learns in this whole experience is that I've probably been sucked into the world of public sector more than I've ever been sucked into that world, and it's quite revealing. Quite revealing just to see different leadership styles and different, I guess, a different mindset. I completely respect the fact that they've got to oversee the public purse and they're responsible for that. But I do feel at times that the public sector has been a bit slow to move and slow to disperse monies to reach the local community groups who actually are active in the here and now and have been for the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Just a few good questions coming through just now. So, have you, in terms of your peers and people that you're working with, has anyone kind of inspired you? You don't need to say who they are, but just in terms of some other organisations, some other leaders, what is it that kind of, where do you kind of take your self-care from? Where do you kind of take your inspirations from? It doesn't need to be peer groups, it could be, where do you learn?
My inspiration comes for probably the smaller acts of kindness, actually, when people do things that surprise me. So we had a member of staff last week who was tasked with delivering a food parcel to one of the families connected with the Stepping Stones project I spoke about earlier on. Without prompting, he took it upon himself to ask Stepping Stones if the families needed nappies, because his just outgrown his nappies just coincidentally. And it transpired that this family actually would have benefited for like getting some nappies. And it's just those wee moments, I think it's those wee moments that inspire me, where when nobody's watching, somebody just does the right thing. I think that's why I often like hold up Alan Hosey as a guy that inspires me in our local community, because he's authentic. You know, he's worked in our community for a long time. He's a hugely, like, I think, capable and talented and professional guy, but he's also really humble, really humble, and he cares about his community. So it's those types of individuals that inspire me, like the ones that are the up front, centre stage, and maybe didn't get the headlines, and maybe didn't get the credit they deserve. It's those people that fill my well and I aspire to be.
I agree with you. Just to finish off, I'll ask you a kind of final question. There's quite an interesting one, quite a positive, I think. Are you, because we've all been in lockdown for quite a while, obviously we've not been doing much of physical activity or getting out much, we've got our 1 hour per day. Are you kind of planning for, or are you hoping for foreseeing a kind of upturn in physical activity?
I think it depends, because I think you've got to also like weigh up what the confidence factor, I would call it. You know, like say, I don't know how quickly people are confident about going to sports facilities and leisure facilities in large numbers. So I think for us, we need to prepare for that. I think it's something that will take a bit of time. I think it will take a bit of time for people's confidence to return. So whilst I'd love to plan and prepare for a spike in our business, I think I'm more inclined to lean towards, I think it will just take a bit of time. Would I love to think that everybody will continue to keep running and cycling and everything else? Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that would be amazing. But that'll only happen if we actually invest in sport, and we invest in like I think infrastructures across the country. I mean, for example, you've got a situation where we have lots of fantastic sports facilities in PPP schools, and local community groups and organisations can't afford to use the facilities. So I think that needs to be reviewed, and there needs to be a look at that, because if the appetite's there, then let's make it as easy as possible for people to take part in physical activity and sport. And if one of the barriers is that, then frankly that should be funded. But ultimately that will come down to like what we're prepared to pay in terms of our taxes. So we need to be mature about this conversation and also honest about this conversation, I think.
Douglas, I think that's a perfect point to end the conversation. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time. I think these honest conversations from leaders like yourself, leaders that a lot of people respect, and respect to have built a good community and a good trading model. It's important to hear these stories of how hard it can be across the board, and so that if people are tuning in today, they're maybe starting up organisations, they're running organisations that are earlier stage, and can say, as you say, it's not all about having stages where we have one or two people always shouting about how successful.
I think just now more. I think just now more than ever, Kieran, it's about trying to focus on what can you do. There's lots of things that's difficult for us to do right now, and I get that. But let's just try and focus our energy and efforts around what can we do, and let's see where that takes us. So again, I go back to something I said at the beginning, and can we just be curious around, like, say, what the opportunities might be here, and can we come out this other side just in better shape to go forward.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Douglas. That's been
no worries. Thank
fantastic.
you. No worries.
Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
time, and see you all later. Bye then.